the answer is yes, and frankly, it would be shocking if they didn't. But between, that being on their minds tomorrow, what would have been Kobe's birthday, and then the game being played on August 24th, 8/24, which is Kobe Day anyway. The emotions of all of that, I'm curious to see if we see anything that feels like it's being fueled, by Kobe and that memory and really wanting to do right by him in this game and in the series. And obviously, these are things that you're going to be reading into, whether it feels positive or negative in the sense of putting too much on themselves. But I am going to be curious to see if there's anything that feels like signs of that.
Well, I have thought all year long, this idea of, or not all year, but you understand what I mean, since the crash, that making this season about winning for Kobe, playing for Kobe, showing, fulfilling that kind of play, playing with that kind of, like, all of those things where you project, that his memory, whatever it is, onto your personal games, the joy, the motivation, whatever it is unfair. And I don't think it's particularly healthy. If a player wants to draw inspiration from that, that's one thing. To create kind of a narrative, to kind of create this sort of framework around winning for Kobe.
When you say that really quickly, do you mean us doing it as unfair, like media fans, or do you mean them doing it to themselves?
I think media and fans, I don't think they'll do it to themselves in any way that is internal, unless it feels like they're made to. Like it, where you are told
I actually don't know.
Where I think if you're told so many times, like, you got to go win this for Kobe, you got to, all that kind of stuff. Like, LA needs you to do this for Kobe. Like you have to fulfill this thing. There's so much that comes from what it takes to get from point A to point B in a title that needs to come internally. And if guys draw inspiration from Kobe internally, like, something that they learned, their relationship, whatever it might be, that I think is great and healthy, and it can be a source of strength for players or whatever. If it comes out of obligation, out of a feeling that if you don't do something, you're going to let Kobe down, you're going to let LA down, you're going to let the memory down, or something like that, that's where I think it can become unfair and difficult, because trying to do something like this in that context, to me, seems very difficult and very taxing.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree, but I also don't think there's really a difference. I mean, ultimately, if that is something that is fueling, I remember both of us wrote about this for The Athletic. In my case, I think a couple of times, like how, that type of burden, whether you're talking about for the organization or whether you're talking about for LeBron specifically, because, becoming the face of the organization, after Kobe, the challenge of doing that is something we used to talk about, forget after Kobe retired. We used to talk about this while Kobe was active. The idea,
absolutely.
The shadow that Kobe cast over this organization, and, through merit, through earning it. Kobe earned every single bit of juice that he had within that organization and the exaltations. But it doesn't change the fact that this was going to be something difficult for the organization anyway, much less within this type of context. But I feel like if that's something that these players and the organization feel, in a lot of ways, the impetus for it doesn't matter. Whether it's external or whether they're putting it on themselves, it's the same thing.
I don't know. I mean, we can go around and around. I feel like, feeling
you can say that it's unfair of fans to put that on them,
to feel like you're letting down Kobe.
But I think it does
in the spirit of Kobe by not winning a title this year. That's BS.
I'm not saying that they should feel that way. What I am saying is, if they do feel that way, ultimately that's something feel, whether fans are putting it out there or not. I think they likely feel that way themselves.
They might, and if they feel that way themselves because that's how they feel, I think that can be you can turn that into a fuel and a motivation. What you don't want it to become is a burden. I think that's basically kind of what I'm getting at, where it becomes one more thing that you're carrying around that you don't necessarily want to, but you're carrying it because you feel like you have to carry it, not because it's something that lifts you. That's the difference. It could be a lifting factor. It could be a burden.
It could be.
And it's probably different for different guys.
I certainly hope that it's a lifting factor, but the truth is, I think it's what all these guys were going to feel regardless.
It could be.
I think it is so difficult for them not to feel that way, even if you feel like, frankly, it's unfair to themselves. To put that on themselves.
Yeah, I think it's completely unfair.
But
to do it to yourself.
I get a very strong sense that that's how they feel about it regardless.
All right. So